This is Big Poppy Racing.
Welcome back to the 2021 Diecast Games. Today, Event 5, the combination track. This will be 2 lanes, run on a standard Hot Wheel track. You'll start with a drop or a descent like this. You'll go through down the hill, then you'll go into the straightaway. You'll go into a 180, then up a slight hill, and then down to a level area where you'll hit another 180. You'll come off there level and then drop to the floor. The time you record on each side of the track will be added together, and that will be your total time. So each car will run in each lane. We will run one team at a time, and that will give you an idea of your times and where you may stand. So let's get going with this. First up is going to be League of Speed. He's got a Ferrari F40 and a Trim truck. They'll start. Looks like the Trim truck's got the inside lane on the curve. Oh, he's going to take the first race. Let's see his time. 6.2. That's a good time. We've swapped now, and the Trim truck and the F40 come around. Looks like the Trim truck's going to win this heat too. And he's going to finish with a total of 12.464. Next up, tie went on Sandy Mack. Got a Lancer Evo and a Roger Dodger 2.0. So Sandy Mack will split the League of Speed up. Next up, JX4 Racing. We got a 33 Willys and another Lancer Evo. So JX4 will come in 4th and 6th at the moment. Next up, the A team and the Crazy Canuck, Chevy Silverado and a Lancer Evo. So Crazy Canucks Evo will land 2nd at the moment. Next up, R&R Racing. Here's Rhett Rogers. Rhett lands at 7th and 10th currently. Next up, the 7th Infantry Division, the VW Bug and the Cockney Cab 2. Currently placing 8th and 9th. Here we go with Gen X Vintage Racing. He's got a Ferrari Medina and a Silvia S15. Two good times will place him 4th and 5th at the moment. Here's G-Mama with G-Buggy Racing. She's got a Jaguar XJ220 and a Way Too Fast. The Way Too Fast takes over 2nd place. Next up, the Button Boys with a Chevy Stalker and a Honda Civic Si. The Button Boys landing 11th and 12th at the moment. Next up, Metal Mania 3D, Porsche 911 and the old Aero Flash. The Aero Flash and Odie but a goodie taking over first place at the moment. Next up, Miss BFG, a Ferrari F40, and the Speed Bump. Mrs. BFG good enough for second and fourth at the moment. Next up, Scale Racing Channel, the Mercedes E470 and a Nissan 300ZX. So Scale Racing taking over first and fourth at the moment. Next up, Mr. Mom Bubba. He's got that Mercedes and also an Evo. Mr. Mom's Bubba doing fourth and eighth at the moment. Next up, 734 Outlaws. He's got a Pontiac GTO and a Datsun 300Z. So the Outlaws in at 11th and 17th at the moment. Next up, Big Rami. Here's a Ferrari F40 and a Subaru WRX tuned. Big Rami holding 7th and 18th at the moment. Next up, Redline, Salvage Inc. He's got a Chrysler 300C and a Porsche Carrera GT. Redline in at 20th and 22nd at the moment. Next up, Lady of Speed. She's got an Aston Martin Vantage and that Nissan 350Z. Showing why she's called the Lady of Speed, taking over first. Next up, Peppler Racing. Got a 77 Dodge van and a Lotus Elise. Peppler Racing holding 27th and 28th at the moment. Next up, Big Al's Custom Diecast. He's got the Jeepster and the Lamborghini Urus. Big Al's top finisher currently holding 12th. Up next, Mr. Mom Joe. He's got a Ferrari F40 and a Toyota Supra. Mr. Mom Joe's holding 5th in the 11th spot right now. Next up, Hot Car Track. He's got a Jaguar XJ220 and that Kia Stinger GT. Two close times will place him 12th and 13th at the moment. Next up, Team DRT3K, Ferrari 360, and a Turbolence. Good enough for 9th and 11th at the moment. Up next, Red Pill Racing. He's got that Datsun 300ZX and the Carbonite. Red Pill doing 4th and 6th at the moment. Next up, WB Racing and Wobbly Bob. He's got a 98 Porsche 944 Turbo and the Kia GT Stinger. So Wobbly Bob in the points at 28th and 34th at the moment. Up next, Cut Rock Racing. He's got a Silverado and a Kia Stinger GT. So Cut Rock Stinger taking 18th at the moment. Next up, MDG Michael's Diecast Garage. He's got an Evo and, of course, a Roger Dodger 2.0. MDG doing well enough for 13th and 17th at the moment. Here's Toon Tracks Racing with the Mercedes and the Taxi. So Toon Tracks falling below the points. Next up, Mr. BFG, a Ferrari F40 and the Speed Bump. So Mr. BFG placing 24th and 28th at the moment. Here's Lily's Boneyard, got a Cadillac Escalade and a Turbolence. So her Turbolence is landing 7th at the moment. Next up, DXP Racing, the Honda Sprocket, and the Silver Bullet. So DXP's Bullet and Sprocket both placing in the points at the moment. Next up, Kaboom Racing. He's got an Evo and the Sidekick. So the Evo is going to land 25th at the moment. And next up, Dirty Deeb Racing, Jaguar XJ220 and a Nissan 350Z. So Dirty Deeb's Jaguar just out of the points. Next up, Arlo Racing. He's got an Evo and the Semi Psycho. So Arlo Racing right around that 12 and 13 mark. Next up, NJ Drive Racing, a Dodge Dart, and he's got an Evo. So NJ's Evo is holding 23rd at the moment. Next up, Down Squad Racing. He's got that 67 Pontiac Firebird and a Lotus Esprit. So the Lotus for Down Squad in the points at the moment. Next up, Your Nightmare Racing. He's got a Datsun 280Z and a Carbonite. So both of Your Nightmare Racing cars in the top 10, placing second and seventh.
I didn't think you had it in you.
I'm your huckleberry.
Next up, Rio Rides. He's got a Jaguar and a Nissan Skyline. Both of his cars in the 13s. Next up, the Silver Streaks, a Camaro Concept convertible and a Porsche Carrera. His best time's just under 13. Next up, Aces High Racing and Spy Dude with a Jaguar and a Subaru Impreza. Just over 13 seconds for his best finish. Next up, here's Blue Line Racing. He's got a 67 Mustang and a Mercedes 500 SE. So there's Blue Line, got 10th and 12th. Next up, Road Rage Racing, a 64 Chevy Nova Gasser and a Honda CRX. So Road Rage Racing will be out of the points. Next up, Troy Racing. It's got a Ferrari F40 and the Power Rocket. So Troy Racing team out of the points at the moment. Next up, here's Rivera Racing. He's got a Dodge Murata and a Way Too Fast.
Say what? Say what?
Rivera Racing taking first. Next up, just for luck, there's a Ford Escort and a Mazda Miata. So just for luck, not placing in the points at all. Next up, Pole Boy Racing. He's got a Ferrari F40 and a Shadow Jet. With 15 racers left, Po Boy's at 31st at the moment. Next up, Irons Diecast Racing. He has a Lotus Esprit SI and an Arachnarod. Irons Diecast just out of the placings. Next up, Captain K Racing. He's got a Lotus Esprit and a Turbulence. So Captain K's Turbulence good enough for 25th at the moment. Next up, H-Town Hustlers. He's got a Nissan 300ZX and a Sidekick. So both the H-Town Hustlers out of the money. Next up, here's Nick Devers Racing. He's got a Ferrari F40 and a Turbulence. So Nick Devers Racing just over the 12.8 mark. Next up, Booga Basement Customs. He's got a Datsun 240Z and a Lannister prototype. So Booga Basement Customs over the 13.6 mark with theirs. Next up, Rusty Rods Racing. He's got a 71th Plymouth and the Honda Civic. So Rusty Rod's Racing out of the points. Next up, here's my Hot Wheel collection. He's got a Corvette Grand Sport and a Pikes Peak Tacoma. Get along, little doggy. So Kev Blokey and my Hot Wheels collection, registering their times. Next up is R&R Racing Riker. So R&R Racing with Riker, his fastest time shown. Next up, Gut Feeling. It's got a Lotus Project M250 and a Datsun 240Z. So their Gut Feeling's fastest car, registered. Next up, 4114 Racing, Ferrari Testarossa and a Nissan 350Z. Here's 4114's fastest time. Next up, Road Rage Racing 2, a 17 Ford GT and a Nissan 370Z. Here's Road Rage Racing's 2 fastest time. Next up, Husky King Racing. He's got a 98 Subaru Impreza and a Super Blitzen. So Husky King and the Super Blitzen, 29th at the moment. Next up, Big Poppy Racing. He's got a Toyota AE86 and the Carbonite. Big Poppy out of the points. Just below now, Overclocked Racing has a Shelby GT 500 and a Lancer Evo. Overclock taking 16th. Only one racer left. It's Uncle Elvis Racing. He's got the Studebaker pickup and the Governor. So Uncle Elvis will finish just below the points also. So here's the final standings for the combo. Here's the car standings after 5 events. Here are your team standings after 5 events. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and don't miss the next race.
This has been a Big Poppy Racing production.